Are you ready for the day to drive past your old warehouse or your old, cabinet shop or whatever, your old renovations company? It's still got your name out front, but you're not the owner. The identity is
Yeah.
sometimes the hardest thing in handing
Yeah.
off the business to somebody else, because now the current owner is like, well, that
No.
defines who I am.
Also, I think what too many people do is they make these decisions without really thinking them through.
Hey, welcome to the show. My name's Dominic Rubino. I appreciate you being here. Today, we've got a very important topic for some of you, and for others, you didn't even know this was a thing. We're going to be talking about succession planning, and that's when you pass the business on to somebody else, whether it's to your kids or somebody else in the family. Maybe succession planning for you means selling it to your internal staff. Maybe succession planning means selling it to somebody else entirely. Whatever it is, I've got an expert here for you from Harvard. Yeah, I met him through the Harvard Business Review because I got his book on family succession planning, and I thought it was very interesting. So we're going to be talking to Josh Barron today. He's an expert on this. He's been doing it for many years. He's got some wise models, some things for you to understand if you're entering this conversation about family business, if you have a family business and you feel stuck, if you have a family business and you haven't been able to have the conversation, if you're in the middle of transitioning a family business, all of those things is what I'm bringing you today with Josh Barron. If you have any questions at all on this, obviously I'm happy to help. And we have a free download available for you as well. It's called the Family Business Handoff Checklist. Just send me a message on my cell, say Family Business Checklist, and then I'll know which one to send off. My cell is 315-903-7853. Let's get to the show with Josh. We'll see you on the other side. Mr. Josh Barron, how are you?
I'm doing well, Dom. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to see you again.
Same.
Now, people don't know this, but we're recording this during the Christmas kind of season, the shoulder season for Christmas.
Absolutely.
We're on Santa's shoulders. He has yet to eat the cookies. But
Yeah.
you and I might be the only guys still working.
That might be true. This is definitely the time I feel like when things are starting to slow down for most people. I guess for some it's they're ramping up for the year end, but yeah, things do seem to be getting a little bit quieter, which is nice.
Yeah. I think on my calendar, it's weird right now because I'm either super busy or dead quiet.
Yeah.
Those two things.
I'm the same. And I'm looking forward to the dead quiet of next week. It's been a busy year. So,
well, it's interesting that you're here for the dead quiet of next week because we're talking about succession planning and family succession planning. So all the business owners listening are going to be sitting in that Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. And little pieces of this conversation are going to be pretty good for them.
I think so. I mean, it's an exciting time with our families, but it also can be stressful as well. So maybe it's something from our chat that might be helpful to folks as they're navigating through all that stuff.
Well, today's topic, and the reason that you're here is well, first of all, I've been stalking you. This is weird. The police have told me. Yeah, the police have told me to stop contacting you, but I ignored them too.
No, you should. I'm delighted that you did. I'm delighted you did.
Yeah, but I was reading your book, which in a second I'm going to ask you to introduce an overview for people. But today we're going to be talking about why is succession hard? Like, why is passing the business to somebody else hard?
Yeah.
So let me do this to start off for people. Josh Barron.
Yeah.
Who the heck are you? And how is it you come to be speaking to all these forward-facing contractors all over the world?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I appreciate this opportunity. I'm a big believer in sort of what family and founder businesses carry to the world, and anything that I can do to be helpful to folks is my absolute pleasure. So what I like to tell myself at least that I have 4 jobs. First of all, I'm a teacher, so I teach at Harvard Business School. That's it. Yeah, I mean, I know I'm working on it, but no. So I teach first of all our kind of first year strategy class that all of our MBA students take. So I have a background sort of more broadly in strategy, but then I have an expertise really in family and founder companies, and I teach a course called Leading a Family Business, which some of those topics might be relevant or might
be relevant.
Yeah, today. Exactly right. So and I love it. I get to teach students from all over the world who come here, both the MBAs, but also we have some executive education programs that people can come for a few days or a few weeks to learn about all kinds of stuff. So job one is I'm a teacher. Yeah. Job two is I actually advise companies. So I co-founded a company called Banyan Global that works with family businesses, family offices all over the world. I've been doing that for almost 20 years.
Mm,
And I actually like the way in which the teaching and the advising intersect. I like to tell people when I'm teaching them that
right.
that everything I'll sort of say in the classroom I've tried and hopefully works more often than not. But also part of advising is teaching, as you know, it's like helping people
It's
to understand and
it's a balance, isn't it?
see the world out there. So they kind of work very well together.
Yeah.
And that connects to my third one, which is I research. So I've written 30 plus articles for Harvard Business Review and a few other places. I've written a couple books, one about sort of international politics, which is based on my dissertation. No one reads that one.
Yeah, no offense.
Another one. What's that?
That was not the one I read of
No,
yours.
no, yeah, I'd say it's been read by dozens. And then the second one has been read by thousands. I feel a little bit better about that one. It's called, Family Business Handbook. And we were asked by Harvard Business Review, my co-author and I, to
Yeah.
write a book that sort of answers everything you need to know about a family business, which of course is impossible, but we gave it our shot. And then
Yeah.
I'm working on a third book about conflict more broadly, which we can get into as well.
Yeah.
And then last and most important job is father, 13-year-old twins, boy and a girl.
Twins.
Yeah. So it's
Wow, that's fantastic.
it's been fun. It's been really fun so far. So
Yeah.
teenagers are a challenge, but a wonderful one.
Yeah. How many things end with Dad?
Increasing by the day. I feel
Yeah,
like.
right? Every day. Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it didn't used to be very many, but now
Yeah.
there's
It goes up.
there's quite a lot of those.
Well, the reason that I've invited you to be here to talk to our audience is because of the Family Business Handbook. There's a lot of models in there that are
Yeah.
interesting, and that's what I'm hoping we talk about today. So, you and I have spoken about who's listening in the audience,
Yeah.
but even for the audience, let me restate who's listening in the audience.
Okay. Good.
And I often make the joke that there's no more. There's so many family businesses in contracting and construction and manufacturing. Sure. Probably the only parallel is Greek and Vietnamese restaurants.
Yeah.
But we don't business coach Greek and Vietnamese restaurants. So we're here talking about construction.
There you go.
Right. And what's happening is we've got sons and daughters and nieces and nephews taking over from mums and dads and aunts and uncles.
Yep.
Increasingly, we've got just a $25 million company we're working with now, where a nephew, a daughter, and another person are all in that transition phase. So it's never simple.
Yeah.
It's never the same.
No.
And I want everybody to know they're not alone.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I think there's such a value in saying that word, that phrase, "you're not alone," because I think it can be very lonely. And you think that the issues that you're facing are hard to manage and hard to deal with, and you kind of think you're the only one, and you don't think you should have them. Like when parents are having conflict with their children, it doesn't feel like something that should happen, but of course it's normal. It happens to everyone, right? So having a chance to hear about it and talk about it, hopefully, if nothing else, it just sort of says, well, we're not the only ones, right? I mean, every family I work with says we must be the craziest family you've ever worked with, right? So no, every
You're
family
keeping a little side tally, like, yep,
exactly.
Yep.
You might be right on that one. Most of the time, I say no, of course, but with you, I'm just gonna you might be right. You might be right.
Yeah, it's hard though, because the blending of family and business is difficult. And there's nuances there that none of us can understand. You really can't. You can hear it, you can listen to it, we can read all the notes, but it's really hard to understand. Let's say a son taking over from the father, but then the daughter feels left out, and her, the what would you call it? The brother-in-law has some opinions, and you've got, there you go. We've turned from soup into stew.
Yep.
And that stew becomes glue, the wrong kind,
Yep.
I just made that up. I might.
That was really good. Maybe
that was good, huh?
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not a rapper. And I'm now still not.
Maybe stick with this day job a bit. I'm not sure you quite go that far afield, but I do like that. That's a good expression.
So you've got this thing called the arc. Well, I want to put it all in your hands, but one of the things that interested me was the arc of succession. Why don't we start there? And I'm going to get you to guide us through this conversation about why succession's hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Succession, it's incredibly challenging. And a lot of that's because, you've got a lot on the line. When you think about sort of like succession is this, it makes for great dramas, both
Great
the ones,
TV.
great TV, right? Everyone's
Yeah.
probably heard of or seen the show Succession. But there's like others, Dynasty and Dallas and Yellowstone. And so all these dramas that really focus on not just family businesses, but in particular on this moment of transition from one generation to the next.
Mm.
And there's just, like I said, there's just a lot on the line. You've got the business and everything that comes along with that, both the money, but also the impact on the employees and the community and customers and suppliers. There's just like a lot of stuff that's going on, but it gets into sort of like these very emotional topics about, um, how do I choose among my children? Like, give it to
Yeah,
one
that's
but not
hard.
the other. Yeah, that's really
The
hard.
King Solomon thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, how do I make that kind of choice? And if you are the current leader of the business, especially if you're the founder and you've been doing this for decades, like that's not a job, that's an identity. That's like who you
I
are.
was going to say the identity is
Yeah,
sometimes the hardest thing in handing
yeah,
off the business to somebody else, because now the current owner is like, well, that
no,
defines who I am.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I remember talking to, and not just sort of like it's who you are in the community, it's your status, it's your day job. I remember talking to this one business leader, and he had recently retired, and his wife sat him down and said, um, "I don't know what you're doing, but you can't just be here in this house. Like I married you for better or for worse, but not for lunch. Like you don't have to go to the office, but
Get out.
you can't just stay here all day,
Yeah.
right?" So
Yeah.
it sort of just brings up all of this, as that person who's having to make that transition. It raises questions about mortality and identity and important, like who am I in the world,
Mhm.
and do I really, I love my children, but do I trust them with this thing that feels like another member of the
Baby.
family?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly
Yeah.
right. So it's not surprising that it's so hard for families to sort of have these conversations and to make progress on it. And if you're the next
Yeah.
generation, like how do you raise it? If mom or dad's running the business and they're sort of like they're happy about it, but you sort of say, well, is it my turn to take over? Like, how do you even raise that without sounding ungrateful or greedy or trying to shove them out the door? It's hard stuff for sure.
It's hard stuff. I think that's the point where you or I get the phone call or the
Yeah,
email or the
yeah.
text.
What do I
How
do?
do I bring this? Actually, I would have to say that quite often, at least in our organization, we get the phone call. Hey, our family's talking about this. We don't know what to do.
Yeah,
Can you come in and chat?
yeah.
And maybe you see the same thing as a professional advisor and as you're a Harvard business professor, which is pretty cool. I would not qualify to get in the school unless I was like delivering something.
Oh, I didn't get in either. That's no, no, that's all right. No,
But do you get lots of family business? What do we call it? People who are in a family business coming to take the course to say we've got to navigate this.
yeah, no, it's there are a significant number of students at Harvard Business School that come from family businesses, and in fact, we have a lot of students from overseas, and family business is the dominant form of enterprise in the world. It's like 60-70% of the world's companies are family
Yeah.
businesses, and in some places like India, for example, it's like 90%. So
Was it
yeah,
really? Okay.
there's a lot of students who come here for family businesses. Not all of them actually want to identify that way because sometimes there's this sense of I don't really want to be known for my last name and what that means. I want to be known for who I am. And I've
Right.
had students that actually didn't use their actual last name in class because they didn't want people to immediately associate them with all that comes along with these with the business.
Yeah.
Figure it out.
I get it.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. I've been Things have been changing over the years. I've been at this now for 25, 26 years. But for a long time, if I wanted to understand family business or succession planning, I had to look to Europe.
Yeah.
And I looked to Europe because they speak English and I could read documents and
Sure.
books and
Sure.
and I a little bit of Japan because of the Toyota Way and a lot of that crossover where books were translated. But
Yeah.
I hadn't, to be honest, I hadn't thought about India. I know China has a lot of family business succession planning, but
A lot
really
of
most
first
of
or
it's
second
Europe.
generation now there. That's a lot. And that's, in talking to students from China, a lot of them, it's like, well, there's only one child given the one child policy. So it's a lot of pressure because either you go into the business or no one does. It's not
Or
like you
nobody
can
does.
have a sibling do that instead. So the issues are a little bit different, but there's a lot of commonality. And what I find in putting students together from different parts of the world or different parts of the country is that they all think that, it's different. It's fundamentally different. What they find is it's actually mostly the same stuff. And there are some differences, but mostly it's very similar, the kinds of things that everyone is dealing with when it comes to succession and transition in family businesses.
In the military, they use a term called a force multiplier. It's something that makes a team more powerful than their numbers would suggest, right? Sometimes it's better gear. Sometimes it's strategy. Most often, it's a strong leader. 10 soldiers with the right leader can beat 50 without one. And your shop is no different. Without leadership, you've just got bodies swinging hammers and sweeping. But with a trained foreman, your crew becomes a unit that gets the job done right the first time. That's how the military stacks the odds in its favor every single time. And that's what Foreman 101 is. It's leadership training for the people who multiply your results. If you had a well-trained foreman, I'll bet you could finally make it home for dinner on time. Just because your force multiplier is your foreman and your foreman's tool is leadership training. Anyways, get on the wait list for the next free information session. Just text me at 315-903-7853 and say foreman training, and we'll get you on the list. So I don't want to get away from your ARC model, but maybe
we haven't even
in the ARC model. But what have you seen to be the most successful ways that families have transitioned?
Yeah, and that gets us right at this idea. What we call the ARC is essentially the idea is that in building a transition, you're trying to go from one generation to the next. Think about it like, two edges of a cavern. You're trying to build a bridge, right? And most bridges have arcs to kind of make them stable. So when we think about the arc stands for assets, roles, and capabilities. And the idea is that when we think about succession, too often we just focus on one of those things. Like oftentimes the succession conversation starts with my estate planning attorney says that I have to think about who owns my company, right? If I've been successful enough, or I want to think about who's the next CEO, or the next generation, they're not ready. So usually it's one of those three things. And the idea is that actually all of them are really important. So the A for assets, the idea is that you want to be thinking about how do you pass down the ownership of your business? Mm-hmm. And do you do that equally to all of your children? Do you choose one? How do you kind of go through those dynamics? Sometimes if you're successful enough, you have to think about estate tax. I tell people that, Uncle Sam is your biggest business partner.
No matter
your
what.
Business partner wants 50%, and so you have to kind of think about those, and those can become real problems if you don't manage them as well. So getting the assets right. The R is for roles, which is thinking about how do you actually orchestrate this transition from one leader to the next. And it really is a process. It's not like January 1st, I'm the next CEO and mom or dad's going to retire. It is more of like often a gradual process that you have to really orchestrate.
I'm laughing because you are inside yesterday's coaching meeting at 3:00. Yeah. You're smack inside one of the conversations and not only myself, all of our business coaches on our team, we're all dealing with these repeated, especially the role thing, because it comes back to, I think, actually, let me ask this, not assume that I know. That role thing, how do we transition roles, is the identity question.
Very often, right? Because even like if you pass the legal ownership down, it doesn't necessarily, people just say, well, that's just a tax planning thing. Like, mom or dad's still in charge, even though I own the company. I've heard that like dozens of times. It's really when that sense of, they're no longer the CEO. Like, I'm no longer the CEO of the company. I'm no longer the one that everyone goes to, for their answers. That's oftentimes where that identity issue comes to light, right? And one of the things that, as you think about the roles question, my experience is when we think about succession planning, we oftentimes are focused on the person coming up and like how do we develop, as we should develop and train them and so on. But if you want succession to work, you also have to think just as much about the person that is leaving, right? That idea of that you're not just going to go play golf, right? If you've been working for your time, you call the place to land. Like, I have to have somewhere to go,
something to do,
something that fulfills me, and sometimes that can be inside the company. Like one of the transitions companies that I was working with, there was father and son was mostly running the business. And father was having a hard time letting go. But it turned out that what he really wanted to keep his his focus on was two things. He really cared about like the acquisitions part of the business. Like when they go buy, stuff, he's like, I've been doing this so long, I can tell a good deal from a bad deal. And then he really cared about sort of the next generation and developing not just the family, but the non-family managers. He was really passionate about that. So what his son did is he said, look, I'm going to put you on the acquisitions team. You can lead that. And you can also, we'll do an annual training program. We'll get our new people in there and you'll spend a week with them and you'll train them. And then I'll do everything else. And by the way, that was like 95% of the work was everything else. Right. And so dad was happy, son was happy, and it all kind of works. So that place to land can still be taking on some roles inside the company as long as it's clear where the lines sort of are drawn. Or it can be something in the community, or it can be, sitting on boards. But don't expect, if you are someone who's been running a company for your entire adult life, that you're just going to leave that and not want to come back knocking on the door and say, well, what about this? What about that? You need that place to land. And if you're that next gen, you need to really help that sort of current person find that place to go.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I appreciate you bringing that up because it's an unknown. Most people have never started a business.
Sure.
Even less have sold a business, and even less have transitioned a business.
Yeah.
So we're really talking about a very few select people. And anybody out there listening right now, congratulations.
Yeah.
This is a problem you built on your own, and you're successful for it. You're about to pass on success to somebody else. So you're in a good place.
Yes.
But of course it feels uncharted.
Well, and
of course it does.
People sometimes talk about like high class problems, right? That you get because you're successful. But look, high class problems are just as real, right? And these things, I think it's good to be grateful. It's also good to recognize that just because you are lucky to have this problem and hard work and everything that went into it, that it doesn't make it any less real to you,
right?
Any less meaningful, because again, what you're talking about is that what will influence your company, your family, your children, like everything is on the line. And so therefore it's understandable that it feels kind of stressful. So, and then just to complete the picture, the C is for capabilities, which is essentially saying that you have to prepare the next generation for whatever is in front of them, whether it's running the business or serving on the board if it's a larger company and maybe not owning the business. And ideally, especially if there's more than one of them, family business is a team sport. So you have to actually help people learn how to work together and develop that skill set early so that when it's time for them to sort of, if there's 50-50 in charge, that's a lot of compromise. You have to really learn how to do that effectively.
That's a lot of compromise.
There's a lot of compromise. So that's what the arc is, this idea that it's not one thing. It's thinking about how do you transition the assets, how do you effectively hand off the roles, and how do you develop those capabilities the next gen will need in order to be successful.
So we're talking about the how, which I appreciate because we're putting that question in people's minds. Let me talk about the when. And by that, I mean, how much time should you give yourself for this transition? Let's go back to your roles conversation.
Sure.
I really appreciate you saying we always talk about somebody moving up, but what about the person moving out?
Yeah.
How much time do we need for the up and out conversation or that process to work?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, it's something that is happening. I would say almost all the time. I mean, good succession planning process. It almost like you complete one, you start the next one, right? But it's sort of like it goes through ebbs and flows. It's not like you're constantly focusing on that, but it really starts when the next generation comes into the business, and you're trying to be thoughtful about what they should do, like good, better practices and worse practices about how to do that effectively. And then there's this period of time when you're working together. And then usually you reach a moment, you kind of know you're reaching that moment when it's like, well, all right, that person, the next gen person seems ready, or I'm ready to take a step back and spend more time out of the office, or I have a retirement date in mind. And that's when it really kicks into gear. And ideally, usually it's not a few months, right? It's not a few decades.
No. Well,
it's probably a few years that to do, like really, you're really kind of focusing on this as it's always sort of in the background, but then it becomes in the foreground, and you really have to work on it more aggressively. Yeah.
Hey, if you guys know me, I love Sun Tzu. His book is The Art of War, but you might also know that my old business partner is Brian Tracy. He's a famous author and business strategist. Brian Tracy once said, "Leaders think and talk about solutions. Followers think and talk about problems. Well, let me ask you, which one of those is your foreman doing today? And then think about Sun Tzu, the great general. And he said, in the midst of chaos, there's also opportunity. If your shop feels like chaos, the opportunity is to train your foreman to lead. That's what Foreman 101 is all about. Join me for a free info call. You, the owner, and your foreman have to attend together. Get on that wait list for the next free information session. Just text me at 315-903-7853 and say foreman training, and we'll get you on the list. So there's something that we talk about here in coaching, which can sometimes be controversial, and I want to get your take on it.
Sure.
But if all things are equal and you have a new person, I'm going to use very simple, a dad's running the business and the son wants to take over, and all of the different flavors of that.
Yep.
But I have seen in the past where it's worked really well to send the son away and say, go work somewhere else, go work for another construction business, go work Starbucks, go work for a health authority. I don't care what it is.
Yeah.
But when you're done there, whatever level you leave at, you can come back here. But I need them to, it can't be, what do you call it? Naval. Like, we just can't keep looking at our own belly button and stay inside the business. What's your thought on that?
So this is an interesting one. I think the vast majority of the time, it's incredibly valuable for someone to go work elsewhere. And I think about, like, there's sort of like 3 C's that you get from that. One is you get confidence. Like, that, if you go work somewhere else, that you've been successful because of who you are, not because of your last name, right? So it's like your first name rather than last name kind of thing. So you actually build up some confidence that says, I have an ability to have an impact. And it's not just about, I'm not just sort of like reflected light, as opposed, I'm actually like, I can kind of do this on my own. Second thing is kind of what you were saying, Dom. There's a competence you get, like you get a skill set, right? I can go learn how someone else does these things. And that can help us as a company to know how maybe larger companies, how they are doing this. And maybe we aspire
how they run meetings, how they do purchasing.
We aspire to double our company in the next 5 years. Well, let's go work at some place that's already done that. And what looks differently? What can we, so there's sort of like a skill set, a competence that comes with that. And the third thing is credibility, that it's really hard to come into a company when you are just out of school or just out of the training program, whatever it is, and expect people to take you seriously, right? Sometimes they'll call you the COO, the child of the owner, right? Now they don't mean it like not the chief operating officer, but like,
I haven't heard that in years. That's right.
It's not a compliment, right?
It's not a compliment.
Not a compliment. No. And so when you go and work somewhere else for a period of time, people recognize that, and say, oh wow, like this person actually, deserves to be listened to, not just I have to listen to them because it's the boss's kid. So I think in general, it's a really good practice to go out there, get some work experience, and not, so you can bring that to yourself. And actually it makes it easier also to integrate into the company when you do those things.
So if I understand you correctly, the 3 C's of getting ready to take over the business are confidence, competence, and credibility.
Those are 3 things that are really helpful, and those are 3 things that you get by working outside that are harder to get if you don't.
Yeah, that's wise. That's good. Somebody out there listening is like, uh-oh. Well, we had a situation here in a roofing company.
Yeah.
Where the father sold the roofing company.
Yeah.
And the 40-year-old son was the vice president of the roofing company. And he found himself unemployed. He's still got a nice check. Yeah. But he realized he doesn't have a resume. And his only experience is, I have the last name of the guy who started a roofing company. And of course I was VP. And it's hard to get hired as that.
Yeah.
When you go to the next place.
It is. And that's, hopefully I don't think that's an issue that everyone will face, but certainly it's something that having that outside experience, definitely it provides a little bit of a hedge if things don't work out perfectly inside the company, or as you said, the company is sold. It's another reason to do it. But even if there's no intent to sell the business, and even if you plan to kind of like stay there your whole career, even then, I think this is something that really there's value.
Absolutely do it. Yeah. Because you're bringing in those other ideas. Like I said, how to run meetings, how do we deal with a dicey HR situation? How do we do purchasing? How do we have a Christmas party? Like you can't just do it your own way all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
So we've talked about the arc, which I think is brilliant. one of the other things you mentioned is the founder's final act. And
Yeah,
this should have ominous music put over top of it.
sounds it, right? Very
Yeah,
odd.
right? Yeah. But it's a really good phrase. And I thought I'd ask you today, what does that founder's final act look like? And take us in it and out of it.
Yeah, and for anyone who's interested, there's an article in Harvard Business Review. If you can go and search the title or search my name, and you'll find it on hbr.org, the website. And basically, the idea is that when we think about founders, again, we kind of focus on the last decision you make is like who's the next CEO, but oftentimes the last big decision you make is what happens to my company, who owns the company when I'm done with it, right? And there's a limited number of things you can do. You can sell it to someone else.
Yeah.
You can sort of pass it down to your employees. In some cases, like Paul Newman gave his to charity. There are others that have done things similar like that. IKEA is an example of a company that's now owned by a charitable foundation or a couple of charitable foundations, or you can pass it down to your children. And sort of like there's a limited sort of places you can do. And the reality is that choice about what happens to the company who owns it is going to sort of have these very long lasting implications for the business itself, for your family, for your community, all these kinds of things. And so when we talk about this idea of a final act, like that's the last, big decision, and one that just kind of like plays out for decades, sometimes centuries, about that decision and sort of all the implications that it has.
Yeah. It's one of the questions that we'll ask. And sometimes we ask controversial or abrupt questions
Sure.
in coaching just to get people thinking.
Yeah.
But it goes along the lines of this. Are you ready for the day to drive past your old warehouse or your old, cabinet shop or whatever, your old renovations company, and it's still got your name out front, but you're not the owner?
Yeah.
Right? It's still called Jack's Home Renos or Jack's Kitchen Cabinets or Jack's Pile Driving. Doesn't matter. But you're no longer associated. It's somebody else's company. And usually that when people are like,
I'm getting a little uncomfortable as you're saying it. No, I'm like, my stomach's in knots. It's like, yeah, I mean, you imagine it's sort of, that would be, for some people, that's going to be a really hard thing to do. But those are the kind of questions that you want to be asking yourself. How important is that to you? Like to either have it continue, or if you sort of actually don't want it to continue that way. And that, we give this list of things that could be important to you, a sort of laundry list. You can check off the things that matter and cross off the things that don't. And the point is, like, you should go through that exercise as a founder of a company, and reflect on what matters to you, and make this decision about this big ownership question, with all that in mind, because it will affect all of those things that you care about.
Yeah. As you were answering that, I was thinking about the time it takes to adjust my books, my financial statements, to reflect the proper exit strategy. Because I'm a dork and that's what I think about.
Yeah.
But please take this as a compliment, because I'm going to ask you your opinion on that.
Yeah.
From your background as an advisor, how much time should I give myself as a company to change the books to reflect being ready for that change in ownership? Because, in some cases people pass away and that's instant and we have to deal with it. But when we've got the time to be proactive, which is why you would listen to this episode.
Right.
How much in years, like how much time do I need to do that?
And when you say change the books, you mean like have real financial statements?
Have real financials suitable for transition. Like if you're going to do an ESOP, or if you're going to sell it to somebody on the street or sell it to a private equity firm, et cetera.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if that is something that's even you're contemplating, I think that the answer is now, because I think the longer you have the track record in place, the more consistent you're going to be able, or the better you're going to be able to show whoever that prospective buyer is, whether it's your own employees or who are going to have to go borrow money from a bank typically to finance that acquisition, or to a private equity firm. So I think if it's something that's just completely off the radar, I have no intention of doing it, probably less important. But if you're even thinking of it, I would say, do it now, because otherwise you're going to have to reconstruct it backwards. And that's just a pain. It's a lot more, ultimately more work to go back into the filing cabinets and pull everything out and try to say, well, what was our profit? I mean, I remember this, I think it was probably like a $90 million revenue business, and they had no financial statements. The way they measured success was, did the owner have more money in his bank account at the end of the year compared to the beginning of the year?
Right.
So it's something that, but that makes it hard to really know how you're doing, right? So I think even if you're not planning on selling, there's real value in at least doing some basic financial accounting to get a
Yeah.
sense as to how are we really doing, and is it getting better, and how
Yeah.
can we even improve on some of these dimensions. And you can't manage what you can't measure, I think, is often.
I love it.
So
Yeah.
it's really, I think there's value in sort of putting at least some of those basics in place, and a lot of value if you are even contemplating some sort of exit event.
Some whatever the exit looks like, because we
Yeah.
really don't know what it's going to look like.
But
Yeah.
you want options. I mean, that's kind of like, the idea is that, and the earlier you get started on some of these things, the more options you have, right?
Yeah.
And what you don't want is to have something ruled out for you because
Oh,
you didn't have something like this in
you're
place.
singing my song. Yeah. In the when we lack options, we're forced to make a bad decision.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I often use the analogy. We all went to school with that guy who didn't date enough girls, and look at him now, right?
Yeah.
Uh, one of the things I hear some scratching on your side. Is your dog trying to escape?
I don't think so. No.
Oh, I don't know if you can hear
No.
that. The one of the things that we do in business coaching when we start working with a new company is we
Yeah.
work really diligently that the first 6 months is just about finding the source. Like, do we have real data? And so
Yeah.
we focus a lot on those numbers.
Sure.
And it's important. You have to guide a company through that because typically they've been either doing it or not doing it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's start there.
Yeah.
And if they're doing it, are they doing it right and getting the right info?
Yeah.
If they're not doing it, how do we get them there? It's
Yeah.
pretty simple. But it takes at least 6 months to get that ship into the water,
Sure.
and then we can sail wherever the owner wants to go. So I'm glad you said that.
No, and I think you're exactly right that one leads to the other. Because, I mean, my belief is I don't think there's a right answer about when you think about your company. Should you pass it down to your children or sell it, or give it to your employees or sell it to your employees, etc. Owners can want what they want. I mean, it's like one of the amazing things about ownership is that
It's
like
yours.
it's yours, like, and you earned it. You should do what you want, right? And what you don't want is to be forced into a decision. And you shouldn't also, I think what too many people do is they make these decisions without really thinking them through. And yeah, there's some wonderful things about a family business. Obviously, if I didn't believe that, I wouldn't do the work that I do. I think
Right?
that
Yeah.
family businesses are like the cornerstone of our economy, not just many small, medium-sized businesses, but also very large businesses. A lot of these are owned by families, and it can be wonderful. It can also be a total disaster, right? And there are plenty of families that end up suing each other and not talking to each other and all the rest of it. And the choices that you make or don't make as a founder or in that sort of senior generation position have a lot to do with which version you end up with. And if you don't think about it, if you just say, well, I'll just pass the business down to, I have 2 kids and I love them both the same, so I'm just going to give the business to them 50-50, and then they'll figure it out. Well, I got to tell you, I've seen too many of those situations where they actually don't figure it out, and they
don't figure it out.
Business suffers, the family suffers. You have to really make sure that they're the right owners for the future company. And if they're not, you're better off to sell it or do something else with it. Anything, give it away rather than to put that into, a couple people that's going to end up destroying their lives.
I'm fortunate, or maybe fortunate is the wrong word. We're in a situation here where we get to see the impact of those decisions.
Sure.
So there's one situation that I know of where 2 guys were in business together. They weren't family members, but they passed as they passed on, they passed their half to their sons.
Sure.
Well, now the sons are running the business, but one is the office guy and one is nothing. He's just really a cabinet assembler.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
But he owns 50% of the company. And that 50-50 split sounds so easy in the beginning.
Yeah.
And it's having massive implications now on the long term. And then we've got another situation that I can think of right off the top of my head where, we always think about sons taking over. But in this particular case, the daughter is working in the office and she is diligent. She's really good in the office.
Yep.
And the son is a field guy. He's good on the tools and he likes to be in the truck and he likes to go out doing stuff. And she's closer to running the business than he is because of the skill set.
Yeah.
And they've got a third sibling who isn't taking part in the business at all, except that he's still part of the ownership.
Yep.
And then he has some other, I'll just say, social issues that complicate things.
Yep.
And those are real family businesses existing today. So just as you and I started with, you're not alone.
No, no, and that might be a good way to talk about this idea of the 4 rooms, because I think that sort of as you were
Another model. What do you got? Another model there, professor from Harvard?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, tell me the 4 rooms.
I think the cabin and construction folks will like this one, because the analogy is basically like just like your house. You have different conversations. You do different work in the kitchen versus the living room. It's like what's for dinner versus what we watch on Netflix. Like, and each of the different parts of your house is vital, or the whole thing doesn't work, right? And so just like that, we talk about in a family business, you have these 4 rooms, these 4 distinct places where you have to do stuff, each of which is important. But they're also different from each other, right? And so the 4 rooms are, there's the management room, which is where you run the business day to day through the CEO of the company, or you're the VP of finance, or whatever it is. You have a role, a day job, right? Where you're actually running the business. Then you have the boardroom, and the boardroom is where you think about like who should be the CEO, or what's our strategy. Even if you don't have like an actual formal board of directors, you have to think about these questions, like, succession planning. That's a lot of what boards do in these large companies. They think about who's the next CEO. In fact, that's the most important job that a board does. So there has to be a place to have that conversation and to think about not just where are we going, what's our strategy for next month to make payroll, but where we want to go over the next 3 to 5 years. How are we having that conversation? So that's the boardroom. Then you have the owner room. And the owner room is the place where you make a relatively small number of really big decisions. Like, do we want to sell the business or keep it? Or are there certain things that we're not going to do, even though they might make us money because they're against our values? Like we're going to be closed on, over Christmas break, even though that's a week, it's 150, we can increase our revenue by 2% or maybe even more if there are a few people working, but that's family time, and we're going to be closed during that time.
That's our values.
Those are our values. So that's what the owners to sort of set the rules. Or who's allowed to work in the company? Are in-laws allowed to work? A big question in family business. In-laws allowed, not allowed. As owners, you set the rules for the business. And the idea is that this is kind of like a hierarchy, that the managers ultimately report to the board. The board ultimately reports to the owners, right? The owners are the ultimate, those ultimately in charge of the business. And then the 4th room, we kind of put on the side, if you can kind of picture the diagram of, management room, boardroom, owner room. And then we put the family room on the side. And the idea is that the family is not about making business decisions. It's about creating connection with each other and relationships. And that's easy when it's sort of like, husband, wife, and their 2 children. But as you get further down the road in a family business into the 3rd, 4th, 5th, I know one in their 26th generation, like that becomes... Whoa. Yeah, it becomes harder to kind of do that, right? If there's hundreds of family members. So you have to actually think about how do we create those connections in our family? Or maybe we have like a family asset, like a vacation home that's not owned by the business, but causes like huge amounts.
Do you know how many people are listening right now thinking, are they listening to what's going on in our...
Yeah, we have a boat, or we give away money to charity.
Cabin,
all these things cause...
Even a timeshare. Yeah,
timeshare. Like all these things cause tons of conflict, and they're not business issues, but you still need a place to kind of talk about them. And the idea of the 4 rooms is that you want to make sure that you have a space, and it could... I'm not talking like doesn't have to be like a formal meeting, but when are we talking about owner issues? When are we talking about family issues? And sometimes what happens is one of those rooms is missing. Right? we don't do that. And therefore
we abuse one of the rooms.
We don't even have it. Maybe it's just like it's sort of like walled off, or we forgot to build that part of it. Right. So we need to add it. We need to sort of do an addition to our home, or maybe one of the rooms is really messy. Like, we can't have those conversations very well. And so what makes sense is to sort of ask yourself the question, where do we have each of those 4 conversations, and who should be in each of those conversations? Right?
Because it's not always the same people. That is a great point.
It's not always the same people, but sometimes it is the same people, but our role, let's say, that's why I was thinking about when you were telling me that example. So you have 3 siblings, right?
Oh, right. The daughter in the office, the son in the field, and the third.
So when we're in the owner room, maybe they're all 1/3 owners. So when it comes to those owner decisions, should we sell the company, or should we pay out dividends or reinvest back in the business? Those are 1/3 each. And each
sibling number 3 is going to say, yes, pay dividends now. Can I get more than my share? Just so you know. Just so you know. Yeah.
Right. But in that room, all three are equal if that's the way that dad handed them the business. But maybe when we get to the management room, they're not. Maybe the daughter's in charge. She's the leader of she's the future CEO of the business. And, the son is a high performing employee, but an employee, when it comes to sort of, day-to-day management decisions, that's the person that's in charge. So you can actually say, like, maybe it's different people. So when we're talking about the family room and we're talking about succession and so on, maybe the spouses ought to have at least some understanding of what's going on, but they're not owners of the business, or they're not managers of the business, so they don't get to decide on the
Different
pricing
hats.
of the cabinets, right? So
Yeah.
it's just helpful sometimes to just take a piece of paper, draw these 4 boxes. You can see, if you can like download it off of there's like a picture of it you can find in the book or just an article about it, and just sort of say, like, who's in each of these rooms, which of those rooms are we actually using very well, and what's missing or what's messy, like what is not working. And that could give you a place to get better at governance. And if you sort of get better at it, then some of these sort of conflicts and issues that come about, well, then we're not going to go away, but they may just become a little bit less severe or intense.
Yeah. Your intent, what I'm hearing from you is be intentional about this.
Yeah.
Be intentional. And the 4 rooms, again, are, you've got the management room, you've got the board room, you've got what's the other one?
Owner and family.
And the family room.
Yeah.
And so again, I think what I'm hearing about, what I'm learning from you or doubling down on is just be intentional about this. Don't just let it happen. At some point, you've got to decide that this is the path, and then all the actions will follow from there. But you have to decide first.
Look, the reality is that family businesses, it's not rocket science. Like, all this stuff is sort of like, it kind of makes sense. Like, if there are common issues that cause conflict and tension in family, right? They're the same stuff that you see over and over again. And if you don't deal with them, then it's going to get out of control, right? But if you just sort of sit down at a table and work on it, roll up your sleeves and say, okay, let's put this stuff on the table. It's all addressable more often than not, right? And so when I meet with families and they're like, we're fighting over this or we're having issues over that, I'm like, well, have you done A, B, C, D, and E? And they're like, no, we haven't. I'm like, well, there you go. And now it's time to like get to work, and you can get to work, and these things are all addressable. What worries me is when they've actually tried all those things and they're still having the problems. Like, that's but those more often than not,
those problems are going to come. But it's a matter of any problem is fixable. As long as we define it and come up with a plan.
Sometimes the answer is maybe we shouldn't have a family business together. Like, you need to sort of this. I always tell people, you don't have to do this. Like, when I say this, like, having a family business is not a requirement. Like, it can be wonderful. It can be like, there are some just incredible success stories of siblings working together and cousins and fathers and daughters and all the permutations. When it goes well, it's like amazing, because you have these relationships with each other that most of us just don't have with our siblings or children, or et cetera. Like, when you become adults, your lives sort of go different ways. But when you have a family business, you have this thing that kind of holds you together, and it can be just extraordinary. And we have these different strengths that complement each other, and the business is like incredible, and it can all go really well, or it can go really badly, right? And you should just make sure that if you're doing it, you're sort of choosing to do it. And part of choosing to do it, in my opinion, is whenever you do something, especially something that's as high stakes as a family business, because if it goes poorly, not just the business will suffer, but the family will suffer.
Family suffers as well.
If you're choosing to do it, that means you're choosing to do the work. And the work means like talking about governance and talking about stuff like, okay, you're going back to those 3 siblings. Rather than having an argument about dividends every year, let's have a dividend policy, right? Where we're going to sort of like, 25% of profits we're going to distribute out to the shareholders, and 75% we're going to reinvest for growth. Whatever, I made that up. But have a policy rather than every year having an argument about one person saying, I want more dividends, the other saying, I want to grow the company. Find some compromise so that every year you're not having the same.
You're not rehaving the same, which causes stress and conflict.
Absolutely, of course. Yeah.
All right. Wow, we've covered a lot today. Now, you said you're writing another book.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about that? And then maybe also let people know where to find you if they've got more questions.
Sure. So the book I'm writing is very much, we haven't been talking about, but we've been talking about it. The book is essentially about conflict, not just in, my academic background was in studying like international conflict among
Mm,
countries, and I spent 20 years with families. And what I found is that conflict is basically the same wherever we find it, whether it's at home or at work or at your religious place of religious worship or your sports team or
right.
your sort of rec basketball team, whatever it is. Conflict is basically all the same. It has the same basic causes. Therefore has some of the same basic solutions. And so the book is essentially about the idea that what we don't want to do is avoid conflict, right? Especially and this is true in a lot of family businesses. Most of them are not like Succession where they're yelling at each other. Most family businesses are actually avoiding these issues that we've been talking about.
Right.
And that's why I say we've been talking about without talking about it. And what I find is that the consequences of not dealing with all that stuff, of avoiding it, of walking on eggshells and so on, when you make a list of how that affects the business, how that affects your relationships, is exactly the same list as what happens when you have these explosive arguments.
Oh,
So
okay.
too much conflict and too little conflict actually leads you to the same problems. And so I talk about this idea of a Goldilocks zone. You need to find some space in between,
Mm,
some healthy middle ground where you're actually debating and talking about these contentious issues, but in a healthy way. And that's what we're aiming for. We're not actually looking to solve conflict or to avoid conflict. Conflict and tension is necessary for businesses to be successful, for family relationships. You need some of that. And so the book
yeah.
is really about how you can find this Goldilocks zone and some of the strategies you can use to do that, some of which we've kind of already been talking about.
Yeah. This is such an interesting topic. And, everybody listening has a part to play in this as well. If you want to hear more succession plan, you want, Harvard professors coming back talking about this,
Yeah,
leave a comment. Say something in the comments so that we know we're on the right track. Or if we're out to lunch, tell us you are out to lunch. But there's so many of us dealing with this, and we kind of just deal with it quietly.
yeah,
Again, avoiding that conflict or not saying the thing that needs to be said. And I know you and I and our teams get pulled in as third-party facilitators, because we've walked the path, and
sure.
we know some of the models, and you can get people to the end of it. That's really important
Yeah.
instead of trying to do it yourself.
There's so much you can learn from other people, and I think regardless, there are networks of leaders of like YPO. There's Family Business Network. There's all kinds of places you can go so that you can have these conversations, and it just makes it easier when you know that you're not, as going back to the beginning, you're not the only one. So
You're
there
not the
are
only one.
resources
Yeah.
like you provide, like the consulting firms. There's a whole industry that's designed and out there to support families in business together. And that comes like there's educational, like all the things you can think of. And regardless of what form you do it, like take advantage of that. I really encourage people like that, realize that you're not the only one dealing with these, whatever issues on your mind. I can promise you that just like, yes, your family is unique. No one has had exactly the same experience, but it rhymes with someone else's. Like there are other people that have had
That's good.
similar enough experiences that you can learn from them and make your own mistakes, not remake someone else's.
Yeah. Well said. Well, I can't wait till the book comes out. Actually, when the book does come out,
Yeah.
can you get back in touch? And
I would
I'd
love
like
to. Yeah.
to have you
Talk
dig
about
into the models again.
it. Yes.
Because I think this conversation, there's a lot of people out there who didn't know this conversation was a conversation they could be part of.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're just living in it. You're like, yeah, my daughter's in the office and my
Yeah.
son's in the field, but everything's good. Well, 10 years go by and you're like,
Yeah.
I'd like to golf more. Or my wife's saying, let's get in the RV and get out of here. And
Right.
you're like, well, we haven't planned
Now what? Yeah.
anything. Now what? Right?
Yeah.
Josh, thank you very much for being here. I took you away from your family at holiday time, and I appreciate that. And I know everybody else does as well. So I can already see having you back because I like this succession planning topic that you're an expert on, and I like your insights.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it.
All right. Have a great day. Thank you.
You too.
Bye-bye. Josh, let me ask, if somebody wants to get in touch with you and find out more, ask you more questions, how do they do that?
Yeah, probably single best way is just connect on LinkedIn. I tend to post new stuff I do there, and it's a lot of people reach out through that way. It's the only social media platform I'm actually on, so you can find me there. If you want the book, it's available on Amazon, a bunch of other places. And then lastly, if you want to reach out directly, if you just search for my name on the HBS website, there's like an inquiry form that an email gets sent to me directly, and that's an easy way to do that too.
Yeah. Well, and let's just remind people, your name is pretty easy to remember. Josh Barron, Baron. Did I get
One
that
R.
right?
That's the main thing. Yes.
One
One.
R. That's
Yeah.
right. Not two R's.
Yeah.
Which tells me, somewhere back there's royalty,
I like to think so.
the Baron of Beef
Yeah.
or something like that.
Absolutely.
Hamburger royalty. Sorry. But yeah, I found you because I found your book on Amazon. And I guess that's a place other people can track you down. And LinkedIn's
Absolutely.
great as well. Excellent. Well, Josh, thank you again for being here. I really appreciate it. And I know we'll have you back again.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate the
Thank you.
invite.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Well. Mr. Josh Barron, thank you so much for being with us today. You could probably see during the episode, if you're watching this on YouTube, then you could see me on video. But if you're listening to it on iTunes or on Spotify, you wouldn't have seen. I took a ton of notes here. Josh brought up so many interesting things here today. The arc of succession, arc standing for assets, roles, and capabilities, which was interesting because, especially under roles, he reminded us to think about not only are we concerned or we have to have a plan, a future focused plan. We have to be proactive about who's moving up, but also who's moving out. We're dealing with a couple of family business, quite a few family businesses right now, but the one I can think of, the father's ready to move on, but the systems aren't in place for him to do that yet. And so he actually wants to be moved on more than he is. And the son, who's in that position, wants to be taking over more of those roles. So it's an interesting balance. They're moving forward, but this conversation could have helped if it had happened 3 years ago or 5 years ago. Maybe you're in that same place. So think about the arc, the assets, the roles, and the capabilities. What else do we talk about? We talked about the founder's final act. We talked about the rooms concept. The rooms, you should have 4 different rooms in your business, or in your family business, I should say. The management room, the boardroom, the owner's room, and the family room. And for those of you in family businesses, how many times have I seen this where the family room is all of the room? Every conversation is a mix of family and boardroom and business, and there's actually no boundary. There's no time to not talk business, to just, I don't know, sit on a boat and fish, but not talk about the company at all. And then there's times to just be in, what Josh calls the boardroom, and you're really talking about the company. So I thought that was super interesting. His next book on conflict is coming out, and I'm going to have him back for a guest on that because I'm pretty sure that'll be another incredible learning for all of us. You guys know that I appreciate you checking in here. You know that I always try to add value wherever I can. If you want more value from this, go read Josh's book or contact him. If you want to get one of the tools that we use when we're working with family construction and contracting businesses, the one I think that would help the most right now, if you've listened to this episode and now you're curious and you want to know where to start, is something called the Family Business Handoff Checklist. I'll tell you what, there are 5 different paths you could be on when you read this document. It's just a simple tool for you to download. Here's the 5 paths. Number 1, I know who's going to take over this business and they're ready to start now. Maybe that's you. Number 2, I know who's going to take over this business, but they are not ready to start now because they still need training. Maybe that's you guys. Number 3, I want to sell it and hand over the keys. I want to sell it to my team and walk away, or I want to sell it to an outside buyer. This tool is going to help you with that. Or you might be in the situation where I want to keep this business, run it for cash flow, and hire a GM. This is still going to help you because that GM has to know what to do. Number 5, I'm not sure what I want, but I have to start thinking about it. So if any of those 5 scenarios sound like you, even a little bit like you, then grab the download. It's free, and we'll just email it to you. Just print it off or have it on your computer. And the way to get me is always the same. Just text me and say, Family Business Checklist, and then I'll know which one to send to you. I look forward to the day when you and I can actually do this as humans, not through iTunes or YouTube, which works. It's just not the greatest thing out there. I'd rather have a cup of coffee or a glass of wine. In the meantime, hey, listen, if you like this episode, leave a comment. If you like this episode, say something. Keep in mind, we've started something new for 2026. It's much longer to explain, but for every time you leave a like or a comment, you are changing the world. And here's how. For every like and comment that you leave on any one of the episodes, we're going to be donating 3 gallons of water to a community living beside an open pit dump in Nicaragua. My goal is to have 600 gallons of water a month. We're currently doing 60, and I want to get up to 600. So now you're included in this charitable act. I want to do this for Christmas time. There's always something I love doing at Christmas, and I thought this time let's get everybody involved. All you have to do is sit there at your computer or on your phone and like an episode or comment on an episode, and that will go to the grand total, and then we will take care of making the donation there on all of our behalf. All right, folks, thanks for checking in. So now we can have a cup of coffee, we can have a glass of wine, or we can have some clean drinking water and talk about this community in Nicaragua that we're helping. Thanks for checking in. We'll see you on the next episode. Bye-bye.